Hello and welcome to HealthTech Builders. Here we explore the business of health innovation through real stories from leaders in the trenches, the wins, the failures, and everything in between. You will get insights and practical advice to help you build and lead in health tech. I am your host, Rodrigo Hute. Hello everyone and welcome to the podcast. Today my guest is Valentin Randon. Valentin is head of product at Muse. Muse is a neuro-tech company, the builders of the brain sensing headband. Valentin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rodrigo. Really happy to be here.
So today we're going to be talking about the consumer brain health market. We're going to learn about what Muse has been building over the years. It's a very exciting episode. We'll learn about trends in the consumer health space, and also from Valentin as head of product, we're going to learn about how Muse builds product and how he's integrating AI into the way he works. So it's a very exciting episode ahead. So let's start with a quick background, Valentin. If you can tell us in a minute, like what's your background and also what Muse is all about.
Sure. Let's go. So I've been in the product world, leading product at different companies for about 10 years now. Different spaces, different industries. Over the last 4 or 5 years, going really deeply into the health and wellness world. Finding really my passion to be in that world. Loving to really find product market fit with any company I work with, and understanding the value proposition that we have and how we can best serve our customers. So it's been a beautiful journey, and I took actually, interestingly enough, a break from tech a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago now. I thought this was a breakup for good, and I was gonna move on to something else. And I did a year of full-time music, and then after a year, learned I was gonna have a baby, and looked at my earnings and my income from Spotify, which amounted to about $5 a month. And I went back into tech for many reasons, not just for the income, but yeah, I'm actually so fulfilled now, back into this like brain health and wellness space, and no regrets whatsoever.
That's awesome. I can relate to that. What instrument do you play?
Guitar, keyboard singing, mostly guitar singing, and producing music on laptop as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm a drummer myself. I started playing drums when I was 12, and music it's also my passion. But yeah, many years ago I decided not to do that professionally.
Not to pursue. Yeah. Interestingly enough, my dad is a professional musician, and my whole life has told me, do not do it. It's a terrible job. Don't do it. And that's why I just it took me a long time to build up the courage to actually go for it, and then I did, and then I came back.
Yeah. I hear you. All right, so let's talk about brain health. So it seems like brain health it's having its moment right now, and also Muse. From the early beginnings, my understanding was that Muse had been focusing around kind of the mental health space. It seems that it's been shifting towards mental fitness right now. So I would love to understand what's the distinction between these two, and maybe if you could share a little bit about what data or consumer trends are you seeing today that it's validating your conviction and Muse's conviction around the consumer brain health market.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to share about that. So you're absolutely right. We're coming from almost a decade of working in sort of the mental health space, and I'm doing quote unquote here just because it has so many definitions and people understand mental health in so many different ways. The way we've understood mental health, and now one of the reasons why we're shifting to mental fitness is because mental health is similar to physical health and physical fitness. We're really talking about the absence of illness, the absence of mental illness. And so you could be mentally healthy, but still not feeling like you're doing a good job at your work. You're not like you have brain fog. You're potentially, not showing up in the best way in your day-to-day life. And so that's why we're making a shift to mental fitness. The idea here being is, you're on a continuum from, your worst days to your best days. And you could always perform better, be better, whether in your personal or professional life. And so this distinction has been helpful because we're really talking about this, global scale movement that's happening, that's really going from a mental model of surviving. How can I survive in this world? I go to my doctor when there's a big issue and I try to fix it, to thriving. And the thriving piece is, becoming more and more generalized with your biohackers and your longevity clinics and all of those spaces that, are trying to make you feel at your best as many days of the year as possible. And so that's kind of the trend we're really trying to hop on, and we actually are with this shift. Having said that, mental fitness includes mental health, so we'll still help people who have neurological conditions, or mental health conditions in the meanwhile. But it's also trying to help everybody who feels already okay and doesn't consider themselves to have some kind of problem.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So I would say the way I would probably frame it is a mental wellness platform as opposed to mental health. Mental health implies disease.
That's right.
And in order to do that, you or other companies might have to have like a medical grade device and so on. So what I remember Muse in meditation circles, people that that meditate a lot. I start hearing that they talked about Muse and so on, and it looks like Muse has expanded into other kind of areas like sleep, cognitive endurance, and even brain recovery. So how would you describe Muse today? Would you say it's a wellness tool? Is it a neuro-tech platform, or something else?
Yeah.
How would you describe it?
I mean, it's all the above, really. But you're absolutely right. We started 14 years ago, and we started with more like a technology. I mean, like, how do we make this have any kind of value for people? We had this at-home EEG device, and how can we turn this into something of value? And the primal application that we found pretty quickly was meditation. There's an easy way in which in real time you can look at someone's EEG and help them, guide them to meditate better. And that was before the headspace, before the calm of the world, before all that trend. So we were pretty in advance of our time back then. But we've sort of, developed that value proposition, and maybe 5 years ago started entering the sleep market. We developed a headband that's very comfortable to sleep with, and you can enter into very advanced data when you look at actually the brain, as opposed to your sleep trackers as rings and wristbands. The brain has a ton more information that you can look into. So sleep became a second value. And then since Athena, so our newest device is called Muse S Athena, which was launched just a few months ago, we're really entering sort of the performance, brain, and cognitive endurance space. So we're sort of this brain health platform is kind of how we talk about it internally. A brain health platform with 3 pillars. There's the focused attention, sort of mindfulness practice. That's our historical pillar based on EEG as a technology and neurofeedback. Then you've got your rest and recharge. So sleep, or also kind of calming meditations as number 2. And then the latest is cognitive endurance, really trying to work on your resilience, being able to push your capacity, your processing power to the next level. So those are sort of the 3 ways we talk about our platform internally.
And looking forward, how would you describe your long-term vision, for your product vision for the next 5-10 years or so? And in particular, the brain health market, it's quite broad, and I guess that you could approach it and try to solve many different use cases and be in different use cases. So what will Muse do not do? What are some of the things that you think there is definitely, we're not doing this, we're exclusively focusing on, in these areas?
This is a hard question, especially for a startup where we're always sort of monitoring and trying to understand what's happening in the market. Are there things we've missed that we should be paying attention to? And the reality, like you said at the beginning, there is almost one new neuro-tech company coming up every day. Like, it's incredible the amount of movement in that space. And we see tons of new competitors show up, which is amazing because we really see that there's a ton of value and there's space for multiple players here. So it's great to see so much momentum. But yeah, in the long term, and maybe we're skipping ahead a little bit here, but AI is changing the rules of the game. And there's so much that's shifting now through AI. And we see that a ton of value can be drawn from that. So some of the things we're working on, pretty actively is biomarker discovery and what can we not only detect but also predict in the brain from patterns that we see in the signals, in EEG signals, or even in FNES signals now, that could tell us a lot about someone's emotional states, health states from a pure mental health or mental fitness perspective. Even physically, we're starting to see correlates in EEG data for a lot of potential health conditions and moods and other things. So we're very excited about where this can go. There's so much to be done. We're lucky that we have a huge database because we've been around for quite a bit of time. So we have a lot of data on brain. Of a variety of people, longitudinal data as well, so across many months and years, which gives us a really good foundation for us to build models that can interpret data that comes from EEG. And one thing to note about EEG is it's typically quite noisy. So if you wear a EEG cap, either ones in the lab that has like all those cables, or even our headbands, movements will interfere with the signal. We're talking about measuring microvolts on the scalp, which is extremely small compared to movements that have a bigger voltage. And so when you start yawning or moving your face or even walking around, you'll introduce noise in the signal. And that's typically one of the biggest deterrent for people to use EEG in labs or for their research, because there's a lot of noise. But one of the things that helps us here is through AI and through a big database, we can start denoising the signal a lot better than we ever have in the past. So I think there's a ton of applications, and what are we not going to be doing is a tricky question. We're always sort of open to different applications of our tech. We're seeing a lot of potential in the research space. So tons of researchers are using our devices now for their own application, and those vary from understanding the effect of a coffee on Parkinson's patients, for example, to even mind to like reading thoughts. Really is another application that some people are starting to look into. So there's a ton of things that are happening. So always, keeping a pulse on that, on the market, and see where the market is going.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, you started talking about EEG. I noticed that your products, your flagship products, uses two technologies, two sensors, EEG and also FNIRS, or
That's right.
I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. But why those sensors? Why did you choose to work around those two technologies and not other technologies or sensors like PPG, for examples, that are used in other wearables such as Aura, Apple Watch, and so on?
Yeah, for sure. So we started, our very first model had EEG only. So electroencephalography, it's been around since the 50s in labs. It's pretty deeply researched. There's a ton of data there. And that's what you see in the movies. You typically have like the head cap and cables coming out of it, and that there's gel coming onto your scalp to make sure the connection is good enough. And so the initial idea was, let's make this portable for people to use at home, right? That's kind of how our first device came about. And EEG is great. It recognizes the electrical currents on your scalp, and different parts of your scalp has different meaning. Different parts of the brain serve a different purpose. So in our case, we're really focused on the prefrontal cortex, which is our processing part of the brain. This is where our analytical power is coming from mostly, and that's really the part of the brain that differentiates us the most from other animals out there. So EEG felt like a kind of a no-brainer, no pun intended, as the beginning. And then quickly we actually added PPG very quickly in our Muse 2 device. So maybe when was that? Maybe eight years ago. So we've had EEG and PPG simultaneously for a long time, and PPG gives us heart data, so heart rate HRV, which is, like you said, what the other trackers use. We can detect actually blood flow from the brain here too. So that's how we do it. We also added a gyroscope and accelerometer to detect movements, which has been helpful for us in some ways. For sleep, it's interesting. You can detect if someone's turning, which position they're sleeping on the most. Is it on their back, on their sides? But also we can start detecting things like breath, because we're moving a little bit with the PPG and with the gyroscope. You can get a good sense of when someone's breathing and their stillness, especially for meditations. This is quite helpful. So that's been our devices up to Athena. And then with Athena, we saw an opportunity. So we saw a couple of devices on the market start to come up with those FNIRs. So we say FNIRs, functional near infrared spectroscopy, which essentially what it does is kind of similar to PPG from a technology perspective. It's using LEDs. PPG typically goes a few millimeters under the skin. So when you have a wristband or a ring, it's going to go a few millimeters under the skin to try and detect blood flow. FNIRS goes a few centimeters, so it goes quite a bit deeper than PPG, and it detects the oxygenation of the brain in this case. So that's why you need, an organ to understand how oxygenated it is. And the reason why it's important for us is because there's a correlation between the oxygen, the amount of hemoglobin that goes into your brain, and your performance, your brain, your cognitive performance, or the intensity of your focus. So if, for example, you look very intently and you do some math calculus right now, it's going to bring a lot of oxygen up to your brain, which we can measure and we can detect how intensely are you focusing right now. And that's what we've been using in Athena. And so it's very complementary as a technology to EEG. So it helps us measure slightly different things, and we can start, understanding those two big pillars of your brain health and even how they correlate with each other.
So Athena, your product Athena includes the two technologies, the two sensors, or only one?
Both, yeah. So we got both. EEG, FNIRS. We also have PPG still, so we didn't cut that out. So we also have PPG to measure heart rate, HRV, and all that. We also have the movement ones, so accelerometer and gyroscope. And with FNIRS, you can also detect SpO2, which is a good metric to understand some sleep apnea conditions, as an example. So it gives us quite a bit of data to play with.
And so Athena, is Athena developed for the three use cases that you described earlier, or is it specifically created for cognitive resilience and recovery, or?
Yeah, it's all three. So it's really our top device. It's like what encompasses everything that we know and how to do. So if you get that, you can do the mindfulness practices that are based on EEG. You can do the brain training and performance, which is based on FNIRS, and you can do all the sleep and recharge stuff as well.
Okay, so it's kind of your next generation
exactly.
product.
All encompassing. That's right.
Okay, that's really cool. And have you seen huge differences in usability and accuracy in terms of the data that you're collecting, but also in terms of the impact that you're having on consumers?
Yeah. So what we're seeing is that there's a shift in the usage of the device. So, people who would use our previous generation would be, typically meditation in the morning, and then a segment of our population would use it at night for sleep. With this new device, with the Muse Athena, we're seeing another spike throughout the day, typically after lunch, where people use it as a brain performance, sort of to wake themselves up, before starting the afternoon, for example, or midway through the afternoon. And so there's sort of a, not everyone uses it that way, but you have people who do like the morning session, kind of being mindful, and they also sometimes do an evening session with that mindfulness practice. And then you get your kind of spike middle of the day with the training. And at night, you still have people using it for sleep, like we have for a while now.
How do you know that Athena, it's working and effective? How do you guys validate the kind of clinical effectiveness? Have you been running studies like pharmaceutical companies running randomized controlled trials or something like that, or is it user feedback?
So it's both. We've done randomized controlled trials for a while on different parts of the product, different value propositions. So with sleep, we've done quite a few of those to understand, are we actually helping people fall asleep faster? So something maybe to mention for people not familiar with Muse is one of the key components to our technology is the real-time feedback. So in real time, we're detecting, so it's essentially kind of a wearable for your brain, like Aura and the others, except that we differ in that we provide an actual practice to actually improve your health as well. So it's not just a measurement tool, it's also an active tool to help your health. And so how we do this is through the real-time feedback. So the sleep example is, we're going to be detecting in real time where you are on the continuum between awake and asleep. So it's not, you don't fall asleep just in 1 second, you're awake and you're asleep. You actually follow a continuum. So as we detect this in real time, we're going to change the audio that you're listening to and help you fall asleep faster through audio reinforcement. So it's like an active audio loop that you're listening to. And so this, for example, we've done randomized controlled trials for this, putting, audio that doesn't change is not adaptive in some people's ears, and other people's ears had the adaptive audio. And we've seen significant improvement in how long it took for people to fall asleep, and then in staying asleep throughout the night. And similar, we've done the same with our mindfulness practices. Having people use a device for typically 6 to 8 weeks is most of the research we've done, where they have use a device and essentially answered a number of questionnaires before pre-post surveys to try and understand the impact of the device versus someone doing just a regular meditation without a device or with a device but with no adaptive audio in it. So yeah.
So, and what metrics or signals do you rely on, or metrics that you've been tracking to validate the effectiveness of this?
Yeah, so some of the metrics are embedded in our tech. So, we track different things. For example, with sleep, we call it sleep onset, how long it takes you to actually fall asleep, which is a very objective measure. And then we also track subjective measures. So we typically have a mix of the metrics we get from the use of the device itself, and then questionnaires that we have. And we've developed a very flexible platform on our app where we actually have a ton of researchers who develop their own protocols, and they can build their own sets of questionnaires in the app itself, program different protocols for people to do, a 5-minute eyes open meditation, for example, or staring at something on a screen, or even experiments like what we call ERPs, which are experiments that sort of games that you can play to understand your response time of your the response time of your brain to different stimulus that you see on screen. So those are used and modular in our system, so we can use them ourselves for our own experiments, but also other researchers, external people who use them. And actually, most of the research out there has been published by external folks who have used our technology and has demonstrated that it was helpful for, reason X or Y. Like the Mayo Clinic, for example, ran like a big experiment with us to show that biofeedback, using Muse was extremely beneficial for people's mental health. That was a few years ago already. So there's been, lots of research happening in that field from big entities. And then, we of course collect feedback from people as well and learn from what they're saying and what they're desiring to improve our product.
That's awesome. Sounds pretty cool. How many, I don't know if you're allowed to share this, but how many customers or users have you had so far?
I can share the exact number, but we are shy of. I guess I'm kind of sharing it. We're shy of 1 million. We're a little bit under that. So, we have an extensive fleet of devices out there, and that's helping us, like I said, collect this tremendous amount of data.
All right. How about the battery life? I wonder how long can you use these wearables without recharging them?
So 10 continuous hours, typically. So if you use it at night, you'd recharge it every day if you use it every night. But if you use it in chunks of half an hour each day, then you get quite a bit of time.
Okay, so it goes for 10 hours.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. Yeah. All right, so let me shift gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you a few questions about product strategy and product management and product development. You mentioned that you've been a product strategist and product manager for a while, for over a decade, and I wanted to better understand your process. Like, how does the product development process look like at a company like Muse?
Mm-hmm.
And always a very difficult question to answer is like, how do you prioritize? There's always a lot of things to do. I've seen product roadmaps or ideas or features that companies want to, start working, and it's always very difficult how to choose and prioritize what to focus on. Mm-hmm. So what can you share about that?
Yeah, well, there's always, what I've seen, in my career so far, there's always a top to bottom, and then there's a bottom to top, and they have to meet in the middle. They have to match at some point. So it's always helpful to start, in my mind, with the top to bottom. And what I mean by that is start with the long-term strategy. So typically what we do now is we have a 5-year strategy. We update it about every year, once a year, where we kind of, try and plan where are we going with this. That's a company-wide process, and, we're, as part of product, obviously heavily involved in that discussion. From there, I'd like to draw down to 2 years. It's kind of a nice time frame. It's a little bit over a year, and it gives us a little bit more margin to kind of be in that in-between states. And that's something that I do similarly once a year, and as well as a 1-year plan. And that one starts to be a little bit more specific. So you start talking about features, their exact projects that you're going to be working on. And from that 1 year, what we do here, we have quarterly OKRs, objectives and key results, where we dive even deeper, go through the lists. Have we learned anything throughout the year that makes us change our priorities for right now? Do we still feel like we need to stick to that 1-year plan or not? And so there's a prioritization that happens on a quarterly basis that may shift things around, throughout the year, which is totally fine. I mean, as soon as you put a plan together and a roadmap, the next day it's already wrong. Like, that's the rule, right? You can't stick to it, hard and fast forever. So that's sort of the top to bottom, I'd say. And, even within a quarter, there's going to be sprints and things that shift things around. There's a bug or whatever happens that may make sense. So there's a continuous process to prioritize. But the other thing I wanted to mention was this sort of bottom up. And this is where you have more of the, innovation drive the roadmap, as opposed to kind of, market-led or user-led planning. And so that's when we're like, hey, we were tinkering around, and guess what? We can actually do this crazy thing that we had no idea we could do. And then it's like, oh, this is technology we didn't even think about. Like, what could we apply this for? And so I find that this is even truer in hardware than it is in software. So, in hardware, this example with Athena is a bit of a bet, actually, because no one's done that in the markets. We're the first headband to have both EEG and FNews at the same time. And it's FNews is quite new as a technology. And so it was more of a, hey, look, there's an opportunity here. As we were building the next generation product, we're like, we could build that in. And when we thought of it, we started developing sort of the use cases and the plan, kind of, moving forward. And that's quite exciting, and something that I love is sort of inspiring the plan from really sort of the hands-on work and the thought that may arise at any moment. So kind of a both ways. And within your prioritization criteria, I'd say, everything goes in. So you have your user feedback, qualitative or quantitative. You've got your stakeholders as well, and you have a board, and they all have opinions as well. And you have a CEO who has opinions too, and you try and understand where everyone's coming from, get all that input, and as well as the competitors or the market where it's all going. Take that all in, process it with your own brain or with AI. Use ChatGPT a ton for that, for example, and try and understand better what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. What's an actual solid trend that we're seeing versus maybe a spike that will, go back to nothing in a month. And then try to put a plan together. And you're always wrong, and that's part of the process.
And it's not, so it's not a scientific process. It's art and science at the same time. Exactly. And you put a lot of different inputs into the blender, and then something comes up, and you keep iterating.
Exactly. And one thing that I've learned in the recent years that I wish I could tell myself from 10 years ago is I used to be data driven in a bit of an obsessive way. So we'll define our North Star metric, and if we're doing anything in the roadmap that's not affecting our North Star metric, discard it. Let's not do it. And we prioritize everything compared to the North Star metric. I built metrics trees as well. So the North Star metric is being fed by those other metrics that are being fed by other metrics. And you sort of build this logical tree to try and impact your metrics. And the reality of that is you're always going to miss something. No metric is perfect. And you end up over-optimizing for something that actually doesn't correlate fully to the end value for the user. So I have more of a data-informed approach now as opposed to data-driven, where get all the data in, and through experience as well as, talking to the team and really making it a collaborative process, you feel like you end up always on a more of a unanimous decisions. I used to be a little bit too this the way or the highway, and creating a bit of conflict in some of the teams that I've worked with in the past. And for good reasons, like I said, I was missing a piece of the puzzle. And so now feeling like data comes in and there's other elements to it. There's a bit of a gut feeling to it, like any entrepreneurial project as a founder. There's hunches that you get, and you try and understand, why do I have this hunch? Is there any foundation to it, or is it just my imagination? And often hunches are actually correct. I mean, more and more with experience, I'd say. And so I think trying to dig into those hunches and those intentions and even emotional reactions to ideas has been a big learning curve for me, and something that I'm super happy to at least have a better grasp on. And I'm still learning, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. That resonates a lot with me. As you grow in experience, evolving from being data driven or data obsessed to data informed makes a lot of sense, because it's not only about the numbers, it's about intuition, it's about customer understanding, the qualitative parts of it, and also pattern recognition as well.
Exactly.
So yeah, I love the way how you explained it.
Yeah, so, and maybe one thing to add here is that's more of a personal note, but I've over the last maybe 5 years really started to notice the intelligence of my body and how much intelligence it has. And what I mean by that is there's going to be conversations, moments where all of a sudden I feel a little bit of a tension in my stomach, as an example, or my heart is racing. And over time, and meditation has been a big part of this journey for me, learning to detect those physical changes and understand them better can actually give you cues as to what might be the right path to choose. And even I've had examples where even strategic decisions were resonating in one way or another in my body, and I could see, were, in a board meeting, conversation was going in a direction, and I didn't know exactly why, but it didn't feel good, didn't feel right. And so trying to understand, notice those shifts and understand them. And then intuition is that, right? It's body intelligence. And there's a bit of a learning curve again to try and understand those signals, but they can tell you a lot. And often if you dig deep enough, you'll understand why this didn't feel right in the first place. And that might be something to consider in the whole equation.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you a question about your target market at Muse. My understanding is that you're selling to consumers, you're selling to elite athletes. You've been partnering with researchers. So in terms of your go-to-market approach, it's been primarily a direct-to-consumer business. Have you considered working with physicians, doctors, having a B2B growth motion? And then linked to that, I also wanted to ask you about the difference between having Muse as a wellness device versus a medical grade FDA approved device. So what's my understanding is that Muse's products are not FDA approved, and also trying to understand if that's a deliberate decision to focus on the wellness category alone, and why did you guys make that decision?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a great question. So, yes, we are not FDA approved. That is correct, and that's been a deliberate decision. I'll go back to this in a second, but to your previous question, yeah, we have been direct to consumer focused for most of our history. And about maybe 2 years ago now, we decided to pivot. And the reality is we started seeing that happen in the market. You Headspace, but B2B companies, like all the direct to consumer was starting to evolve, and there was a bit of a low tide, let's call it, in D2C. And so, we had conversations with lots of different entities prior to that moment, researchers, clinics, hospitals, and we could see that there was interest. We weren't just starting from scratch. So we also had a ton of inbound requests, from our website. Hey, I'm a practitioner, I'm a naturopath or an acupuncturist, and I love your tech. Can I use it for my practice? Can I use it with my clients? So there was a lot of hints for us that B2B could be big in our case. And so it's been 2 years of trying to explore that market at the same time as the market evolving really, really fast. So within the last 2 years, longevity clinics are exploding now. The whole biohacker movement is becoming huge. And so we're, learning from the market every day and trying to see what makes sense for us. And also aligned with our vision, of course. So right now, like you said, we have still the biggest part of our business is the D2C world. And in the B2B world, we're seeing the most surprising, I'd say, and probably our biggest consumer segment within B2B is researchers. We have seen a huge spike in researchers who want to be doing studies at home, right? Like your typical researcher with EEG, what they would do is they would try and find 50 people to bring to a lab where they would spend 3 hours to do the setup, the experiments, and the end of the experiment, and then send people home. And it would be really time consuming, really hard to coordinate, cost them a ton of money. And so with a solution like Muse, where you can bring the device home, you can run your own studies, and really have a lot more access to a bigger pool of people, you get better data, essentially. And you can study things longitudinally as well. Every participant in your study can use a Muse for multiple weeks, and you get data from that perspective. So that's been a surprise for us, and tons of researchers are reaching out, on this. We, as you said, we're really also, especially with Athena now, seeing tons of movement in the performance space. And talk cognitive performance. And I don't know if you've noticed in the Paris Olympic Games, there was a lot more talk compared to previous Olympic Games about how mental performance impacts physical performance. And so we've actually seen a spike in athletes to want to get a hold of their focus, of their flow states, to be able to apply that in real life physical scenario. And what we see is typically we have kind of how it trickles down for us has been army first in terms of one consumer segment, and we've had multiple agreements and contracts with different aspects of the army. From army goes to athletes. They kind of follow right behind, like whatever the army is doing, or maybe there's something for athletes to follow in terms of performance. And from athletes, we see high executives, so corporate training. And it's kind of all the same value proposition, really. It's about training your brain to be more performant. So that's definitely another segment where we see a ton of value. And, from your corporate executives, then kind of everybody else wants to also perform at their best and feel at their best on an everyday basis. So it's really becoming more and more widespread. And that's why this movement of longevity clinics, getting all your biomarkers, understanding your health a lot better, is becoming cheaper and cheaper, more accessible to the everyday person. And we fit right in, right? Like we're really the only brain health solution that those clinics can provide right now. They have, all kinds of cardiovascular health solution, DNA testing, but they're really missing a brain component to this. So that's where we come in. And yeah, it's been quite successful, but like I said, things are changing so fast. So we're keeping a hand on the pulse of the market and seeing if anything makes sense for us to go into.
So just to clarify, so no plans to be a medical grade FDA approved device in the near future?
No, back to your question. No. It's been a conversation for us. But we feel like there's so much to be done without it, and it's a pain. It's a pain in the butt to do this process. And so, at the moment, we don't necessarily see a good return on investment for this specific initiative. We don't exclude it. It might become a thing for us at some point in the future, but right now there's so much more to do in this market that we don't really need it.
In the wellness space, absolutely, yeah. All right. So my final question: how is AI changing the way you work as a product leader? And maybe if you can share, like, how are you using AI or the different LLMs platforms, you personally, but also in your product management work?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, it's really becoming sort of another expert in the room, and this one has so many levels of expertise in different industries and different skill sets. So I use it, it's hard to even say, probably at least an hour a day, I'd say, both on a personal side, on a professional side. It's become a bit of a counselor for me and my family. It's become it's provided some actually meaningful health guidance, of course, with all the disclaimers that it's always good to refer to a professional. But it's really, especially having two young kids, sometimes you just have a question, hey, what about this cough that my 7-month-old baby is having? Is that a problem? Should I look into it further? And so, yeah, that's been really helpful personally. Professionally, it's helped me nail down value propositions a lot better. It's helped me draft scripts for interviews, customer interviews. It's helped me understand the market better, and like the deep research function has been huge for me on ChatGPT specifically to try and get data about the market. Understanding, for example, that breathwork has had a 30% increase in the market in the last year, which is huge, and even the psychedelic space is increasing 12% year over year, and it's predicted to keep doing so for the next 5 years. Like things like that are meaningful trends that would take me hours of research, really. That's been huge for me. And, always with the understanding that it can be wrong. And it's happened. Very simple things, even math, it gave me wrong results. But yeah, that's been really helpful and saved me a ton of time. And I'm actually just waiting for the day where it's going to replace me. And to be honest, if someone had the time to ask all the questions that I'm asking, it would just be doing the job for me, really. So it's interesting to see that. And really, I imagine that a lot of jobs now will be just like, how deep can you go with those platforms? And if you're spending enough time on them, you'll provide a ton of value to the company in so many different roles. So yeah, it's been huge. And then, even within the company, we're thinking about potentially building AI agents as part of our offering as well, and helping guide people through their health and wellness journey. And also using just AI techniques to, like I mentioned earlier, make sense of huge amount of data, and using neural networks to try and compute biomarkers based on EEG data or FNIRS data. So that's, I think, some of the most exciting stuff that we're onto, is using those AI methodologies to help us go to the next step in terms of understanding and guiding people in their health journey.
So if AI eventually replaces us, if it replaces us as workers, then we can go back to music and spend the rest of our life playing music.
Exactly. Yeah, it will also figure out a way to give us a universal income and all that. So we'll be all right. So, yeah.
That's right. All right, Valentin, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom and experience. I appreciate your time. And for everybody else, thank you for listening and watching. Until the next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Bye-bye.